Hi folks, welcome week number 1 of the Bravura Knit Along. I'm glad you've joined us and I hope you have a good time. I know some of you are here because you just want to know how the heck this thing was made. Well, you'll find out. It's really much more simplistic than it originally looks like. With just a small little twist, perhaps, if you want to call it a twist. It's more like changing the beginning of the row to a different place, changing the beginning and ending of the rows. That's about it. Very little seaming. What seaming there is just a tiny little seam in the back for sizing to, get a custom fit. And a little bit of a seam putting a structural panel in the back just to maintain integrity of the piece. None of the seams are seen, so if seaming is not your bag, don't worry about it. Quick little whip stitch, done. Won't be seen. Works just fine. So let's get on. As you know, if you saw the promo, I'm knitting 4 of these as we go along. Yes, I did start a little bit earlier than you guys did. Primarily logistics-wise, so I could get a jump on my videos. I'm doing 4 different colors for 4 different people. And this way I was able to take one, do a week, do the next week in a different color, do the next week in a different color, do the next week in a different color, and then do all the videos at once. So, yeah, I'll be in the same duds pretty much most of the time. Okay, well, at least the first 4 videos. Let's put it that way. So here we go. We're starting with week number 1, and your assignment for week 1 is rows 1 through 28. Now, you'll notice this video's kind of got some extra minutes on it. It's kind of long. That's because I demonstrate how to do the cast on, because I want you to do a double-stranded long tail cast on. Okay? Now, I know the headaches that a long tail cast on can make when you're trying to figure out how much to start off with. Okay. Got a quick simple little thing to show you how to take care of that. Make it simple and easy. That's the first part. I show you how to do the setup row in another one. I'd show you the transition row from the herringbone stitch to the garter stitch. And I think that's about it for demos. I think the directions are clear cut from there, rows 1 through 28. Oh, added thought. If you're concerned about all the ends on this double stranded long tail cast on, don't worry about it, because they're going to be hidden when you fold that facing over. You don't even have to work them in. You can just hide them in the facing. So, I'm really for quick, simple, easy to do things. And this is going to be a real easy one. I think that's all I got for you right now. Oh, one other thing. Unless the wizard who is Chuck unless he cut it out, he may have left it in. I don't know. He's doing the editing for these things, so thumbs up. Yay, Chuck. Anyway, you'll notice that I kind of screw up. When in one of the videos, I'm trying to tell you guys how to slip, knit. I tell you wrong, basically. Yeah, I don't slip my stitches correctly. But those of you who do it that way, you'll understand and you'll know. Do as I say, don't do as I do. That kind of thing, it's a mom thing. What can I say? So, I hope you enjoy this week. Rows 1 through 28. See you soon. Bye. Okay, let's get started on our double-stranded long tail cast on. Find the end of the ball. Take two. Take this one and pull it out. You guys know that. Now, if you're like me, sometimes you have trouble finding that end. Here's a little trick I learned a little bit ago. Take your index fingers and put them in both ends, and then just kind of swirl them around. And generally speaking, the first yarn that hits your finger is going to be really close to the end. What I'm doing inside is going like this. And when one starts to wrap around the tip of your finger, grab that and pull it out. That's going to be pretty close to your end. Take this little bit of yarn barf and clean it up. So here we got one strand from this ball. Take our cover off for a minute, and now we've got this one. Pull out a few yards. You don't have to worry about how much it is because you can always get more. That's the beauty of this. You're not going to end up with too much or too little at the end of your cast on. Now do the same. Oops, let's get these ends together. Okay, now do the same with this ball. Find the end, pull her out, take your sleeve off, and put your fingers in, twirl them around. Oh, snag something. Reach in and grab the snag. And there's the end. Okay, so line up our ends, get some slack, get rid of the ball. Here we go. They're going to be our double-stranded. Take all 4 strands together and make a slip knot, just like you normally would. Now, these 2 are coming from one ball. These 2 are coming from another. Doesn't matter which one. Now begin your long tail cast on. Just your typical. Don't count the slip knot. So you do this 163 times or 199 times, whichever size you're making. And when you're done, now you've got these 2. Pick one of them. Doesn't matter which one, and cut it off. Just make sure both of them that you're cutting off are coming from the same one. Oops, cut that a little short. Doesn't matter. Okay, now I want to start my pattern. It starts on the purl side, on the wrong side, and we want to use the yarn that's feeding out of the middle of the ball. So let's find our ball. Trace this one back to your yarn, or to your work, and cut the other one. Don't cut that. That's going to be your working yarn. Since we're doing herringbone stitch right now, we're only going to be using one, right? So, this is my working yarn. So I need to get rid of this one. Now, if I cut it right, this should lean back, should go back to this part, the outside. All tangly. Wind her back up. Put the sleeve back on so it holds it nice and neat while you're knitting. And there we go. A long tail cast on, double-stranded. My tails are the right length, and I didn't have to fuss and start over 10 because I was 10 stitches short, or it's just the easiest way to do it. Hope you enjoyed that little tip. As the notes say in the pattern, the herringbone stitch has always worked with one strand, and it always starts with a single stitch first. Let me show you. We're on our purl side right after our long tail cast on. So we've got 163 cast on stitches plus this big slip knot, or 199 plus the big slip knot. Take your working yarn. What you're going to do is purl into the first loop of the first cast on stitch towards the end of the needle only. Just purl that one stitch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, purlwise insert your right needle into the remaining loop and the first loop of the next cast on stitch. Purl those together, then come back through and purl that one. Slide both off. See, you've got one loop remaining from that cast on and these two. Insert your needle into both of those loops. Purl it. Purl together. And now purl the first loop again. And work that across. See? Don't let this one slip off. And just keep doing it. Now, you might run into a couple of these stitches on the cast on that are twisted. Or I shouldn't say stitches are twisted, but the loops are twisted a little bit. More so when you're doing a whole bunch of them and you're kind of mindlessly doing a cast on. Let's say, for instance, these were kind of twisted around each other and it was hard to get into. Not a problem. Just kind of work them. Work it off. Give it a little space. Then put them back on. You can dig them out a little easier that way sometimes. And that's how you work the wrong side of this herringbone stitch. This setup row is always a little bit fiddly, but the rest of the pattern won't be as bad. But you guys know that. Right after the cast on, it always is a little fiddly. Okay, now we're down to the end. We've got one loop left, a double loop cast on stitch, and this glob of 4, right? What we want to do here is go through all 3 of them, purl them together, then purl the last one, or the first one, excuse me, again. Now just slide that glob off. You pull out the knot if you want. There we go. That's your setup row. Alright, so here we go with row 11, the transition row, from where you've done herringbone across the entire scope of your work. Now we're going to put some garter stitch in the center and have herringbone on each end. So you'll do the number of herringbone stitches that the pattern states. Here I'm obviously not going to do that many. And if the astute among you notice, yeah, I knit a little different. Barbara Walker Phillips says it's the uncrossed European or something like that. Very similar to the combined method. That's why maybe if the astute among you noticed my pearls row on that last video, didn't look like I was wrapping my yarn correctly on the purl. I wasn't. Well, correctly, it's a relative term. I was doing it differently. So my stitches are always seated with the leading leg is in the back. That's why it's really easy for me to just go into the back and work my stitches. The rest of you who knit in the more common fashion, I'm just turning these stitches so the leading leg is in the front. You guys, to do these stitches on this right side, you're going to have to slip them and then insert and come around. Not that big a deal, not that much different, just different strokes for different folks, I guess. Let me load these back on right. So here in my sample, I've got 5 herringbone stitches. Now let's make it 7. And this is where I joined my second yarn. Not a biggie. Just give yourself enough room for a decent sized tail. And just hold it back there in the back of your work. Let it dangle. And then hold the 2 strands together. Now we're going to start doing the garter stitch, or actually the setup for the garter stitch. What we're going to do now is you're going to, according to the pattern, slip, slip, knit. Okay, that's what you would do if your stitches were mounted this way. So do as I say, don't do as I do. Those of you who knit like I do, you're going to know automatically, because all your knitting life you've converted stitches. Just convert them here too, because I really wrote it for us. Us weirdos. Okay, so now I wanted my 7 stitches over here. I've got, oopsies, I'm down to 8 stitches over here. What I'm going to do then to eat up one of these is, instead of doing just 2, I'm going to do 3. Kind of similar to that last stitch on that setup row when I was purling. Oops. Did that wrong, because at this point I need to drop that second yarn. It really doesn't matter which one of these you take. Doesn't matter at all as far as the knitting goes. If you're really concerned about it, you could consistently do this, trace it back and do this ball or then this ball. I mean, however you want to do it, it doesn't matter in the outcome of the knitting. So I'm just going to drop one. It's just going to lay back there. Take one and then start my herringbone again. And it'll have the one single. Don't forget the single. And then across. Now, it's time for a happy dance, because what that row just did was basically almost cut the total number of stitches in half. All those stitches you've been slugging through the first few rows, now they're reduced by almost half. I'm going to turn my work. Best yarn management, turn your work, lift all the strands to the back. Now, we're going to do our edge stitches that are supposed to be in the herringbone. The P1, now the P2 together, P the first one. Some of you at this point may want to pop in a marker right here. You can if you'd like. This trailing thread tells me I got to change what I'm doing. But whatever floats your boat. Now, since I'm working garter stitch, then I'm going to knit these. And just knit these across, double-stranded, double-stranded. There's a hanging tail. Tells me I got to do something different. I'm just going to drop one of the threads and continue with my herringbone. There. First 2 rows completed. Yarn management, take everything and throw it in the back. It's not a big deal at this point, but when we have separated this and are working 2 pieces at the same time, you're going to appreciate that habit. So let's just do one more row so you can see. Herringbone, the first edge stitches. And there's my hanging down. Do my garter. drop one, do my herringbone edge, now here, let me do one more. Let me come back so you can see it a little bit better. My herringbone edge, oopsies. My garter stitched middle, double-stranded. Drop one. Back to my herringbone edge. And there we go. Now, some of you are going to be a little dismayed with a little bit of gaposis here. I'll show you on the bigger piece. But this gets a little gappy here, okay? Mind the gap, don't mind the gap. It's not going to make a difference. Fact is, I give you 3 reasons why you don't have to worry about it. Maybe 4. 1, I haven't found a way that really is easy and closes that gap well. Okay, by changing tension, pulling this stitch, pulling that stitch, that kind of thing. Doesn't seem to work extremely well. But the reasons you do not have to worry about it is because, number 1, you're working a taller stitch next to a shorter stitch. The gap's going to get eaten up. Don't worry about it. It will work itself out, okay? The other thing is, part of this herringbone edge that you're working is a facing. So it's going to get turned and it's going to get stitched right up along that gap. Okay? Plus, trust the bloom. Kinsey blooms incredibly well. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And there you go. Happy knitting. Some of you may have caught glimpses of these blue threads. I'll explain those to you. They're just marking threads. I flip a highly contrasting thread back and forth. Each right side row I flip it either to the front or to the back, depending on which way it has to go. It tells me how many rows I've got. It's easy to count. We see these horizontal ones. Those are transitions rows. They're something that I've done different than following through with the plain old pattern. For instance, these were all the herringbone stitches, or rows. These are the rows that had the herringbone and the garter. These are the rows that had the herringbone, garter, and stockinette. Above this horizontal, these are the rows that have the herringbone, garter, stockinette, and then the ribbing on down farther. It's just a way to keep track of things. You can count at a glance. And this, my friends, is how much you will have completed the end of week 1. Now, for those speed demons among you that want to go on, but don't necessarily want to do that ribbing part that's in the middle here, without a little bit of tips from me, then go ahead and on the last page of your pattern, there's a section that's called Back Structural Panel. Go ahead and work on that if you've got some extra time. See ya.